Medial petrigoid. So this is the medial petrigoid, and the origin is in the medial side of lateral petrigoid plate behind the upper teeth, and the insertion is in the medial angle of the mandible. Lateral petrigoid. So these are the lateral petrigoid, and the origin is in the infratemporal fossa and the lateral petrigoid plate. The insertion is in the anterior side of the condyle and the petrigoid fovea. Masseter. So the origin of the masseter is in the zygomatic arch and the maxillary process of zygomatic bone. The insertion is in the angular and lateral surface of the ramus of mandible, coronoid process. So this is the masseter. So the serratus anterior, the origin is from the freshest lips of the outer surface of the upper 8 or 9 ribs, which is located here, and the insertion, costal aspect of medial margin of the scapula. So yeah, it's located. This is the serratus anterior. Subclavius, origin, first rib and cartilage. The insertion is in the subclavian groove of clavicle. So this is the subclavius, and the pectoralis minor, which is this. Origin, 3rd to 5th ribs near the costochondral junction. The insertion is in the medial border and superior surface of the coracoid process of the scapula. Sternocleidomastoid. The origin is in the manubrium and the medial portion of the clavicle. Insertion is in the mastoid process of the temporal bone, superior notial line. So this is the sternocleidomastoid. It stretches from the ear till here. Levator scapulae. Origin, posterior tubercles of the transverse processes of C1 to C4 vertebrae. Insertion is in the superior part of the medial border of scapula. So the levator scapulae is located somewhere here. It's deep inside the neck, and it's located here. Rhomboid minor. Origin, nuchal ligaments and spinous processes of C7 to T1. Insertion, medial border of scapula, superior to the insertion of rhomboid major muscle. Trapezius muscles. The origin is from C7 to T12 and from T1 to T12. So this whole thing is the trapezius. Different scapular movements. Elevation. Depression. Adduction. Yeah, so this is adduction. And abduction is, yeah, like that. Upward rotation. So you do that. Downward rotation is back to anatomical position. So yeah, nice. So the rotator cuff muscles. The rotator cuff muscles are divided to several muscles. The subscapularis, which is this muscle. The supraspinatus, which is located here. And the teres minor, which is this muscle below the pinatus. Pectoralis major. Origins, clavicular head, sternocostal head. Insertion, lateral hip of the bicipital groove of the humerus, anteromedial proximal humerus. Dorsi. Origin, spinous processes of vertebrae T7 to L5, thoracolumbar fascia, iliac crosses, inferior 3 or 4 ribs, and the inferior angle of scapula. Insertion, floor of intertubercular groove of the humerus. So this huge tape here is the trapezius, and it stretches from here. So this whole thing is the trapezius. Deltoids. Origin, the anterior border and the upper surface of the lateral third of the clavicle acromion, spine of the scapula. Insertion, Deltoid tuberosity of humerus. Brachialis. Origin. Anterior surface of the humerus, particularly in the distal half of this bone. The insertion is in the coronoid process and the tuberosity of ulna. So this is the brachialis, and it stems to here, to the ulna. Brachioradialis. The origin is in the lateral supercondylar ridge of the humerus, distal radius, and the insertion is in the distal radius. So this muscle is the brachioradialis. Yeah. Biceps brachii. The origin is in the lateral supercondylar ridge of the humerus, and the insertion is in the distal radius. So this is the biceps brachii. This muscle. Triceps brachii. The origin starts from the long head in the infraglenoid tubercle of scapula, in the lateral head above the radial groove, and the medial head below the radial groove. The insertion is in the olecranon process of ulna. So this is how you find the triceps brachii, and that's the triceps brachii. Anconeus. Origin, lateral epicondyle of the humerus. Insertion, lateral surface of the olecranon process and the superior proximal part of the posterior ulna. So this is the anconeus muscle. Pronator teres. Origin, humeral head, medial supercondylar ridge of the humerus, and ulnar head, coronoid process of ulna. Insertion is in the middle of the lateral surface of the radius. So this is the pronator teres. There. Starts from the coracoid process of ulna. Pronator quadratus. Origin, medial anterior surface of ulna. Insertion, lateral anterior surface of the radius. And this is the pronator quadratus. It's located here. Supinators. Origin, lateral epicondyle of humerus, supinator crest of ulna, radial collateral ligament, annular ligament. Insertion, lateral proximal radial shaft. So this is the supinator, the smaller tape. And this is the supinate the pronator teres, and this is the supinator. Spinalis capitis. So the semispinalis capitis are here, this line, and the origin is from the cervical region, made up of 7 vertebrae in the neck, which is from C1 to C7. Splenius capitis and cervicis. Origin, spinous process of T3 to T6. So the spinous process is actually originating from here to up. So this is the splenius capitis and cervicis, and the insertion is in the transverse process of C1 to C3. Serratus posterior superior. Origin, from C7 to T3. Insertion, the upper borders of the 2nd through 5th rib. So this is the serratus posterior superior. This tapes here, and here. Posterior inferior. Origin, vertebrae, spinous process of T11 to L2. Insertion, the inferior borders of the 9th through 12 ribs. So this is the serratus posterior superior. It's superior to serratus posterior. So it's this one. Scapulae. Origin, posterior tubercles of the transverse process of C1 to C4 vertebrae. Insertion, superior part of the medial border of scapula. So this is the levator scapulae. Minor. Origin, nuchal, ligament, and spinous processes of C7 to T1. Insertion, medial border of scapula, superior to the insertion of the rhomboid major muscle. So this is the rhomboid minor, and the rhomboid major is actually just below the rhomboid minor. So this is the rhomboid major, and this is the rhomboid minor. Torsi. Origin, spinous processes of vertebrae T7 to L5, thoracolumbar fascia, iliac crosses, inferior 3 or 4 ribs, and the inferior angle of scapula. Insertion, floor of intertubercular groove of the humerus. So this huge tape here is the trapezius, and it stretches from here. So this whole thing is the trapezius. Trapezius muscles. The origin is from C7 to T12 and from T1 to T12. So this whole thing is the trapezius. There are 3 scalene muscles: the anterior, middle, and posterior. The scalene middle is the largest and longest 3 scalene muscles, and the posterior is the smallest and most deeply seated of the scalene muscles. So these are the scalene muscles, and the other ones here. Sternocleidomastoid. The origin is in the manubrium and the medial portion of the clavicle. Insertion is in the mastoid process of the temporal bone, superior notial line. So this is the sternocleidomastoid. It stretches from the ear till here. The quadratus lumborum. Origin, posterior border of the iliac crest. Insertion is in the inferior border of the 12 rib and the L1, L5. So this is the quadratus lumborum. Rectus abdominis. Origin, crest of pubis. Insertion, costal cartilages of ribs, 5 to 7 xiphoid process of sternum. External oblique. Origin, ribs 5 to 12. Insertion, xiphoid process, outer lip of the iliac crest, pubic tubercle, linea alba, inguinal ligament, anterior superior iliac spine. Internal oblique. Origin, inguinal ligament, iliac crest, and the lumbodorsal fascia. Insertion, linea alba, pectineal line of pubis via conjoint tendon and ribs 10 to 12. Transversus abdominis. Origin, iliac crest, inguinal ligament, thoracolumbar fascia, and costal cartilages 7 to 12. Insertion, xiphoid process, linea alba, pubic crest, and pecten pubis via conjoint tendon.